as every Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
South of the border.
Are you one of the millions caught up in that first world rat race? Well, I used to be. I'm John Mueller, host of the Expat Files, where we discuss what it's really like to live, work, play, and or retire down in Latin America. Can you really live like a king down here on a crummy Social Security check? What about starting a business, or buying a house, or love and romance? Just tune in Monday and Wednesday at 8 p.m. and send me an email, theexpatfiles@gmail.com. And to listen to any of my past shows, just go to progressiveradionetwork.com/archives and click on the link to the Expat Files. Nos vemos.
I kissed the smile upon her face.
You're listening to the #1 internet radio station for progressive minds, Progressive Radio Network.
Hello and welcome back to A Better World. This is your host, Mitchell J. Rabin, and I'm very glad you're joining us again today on Progressive Radio Network. We're on every Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Many of you know it, and I'm so glad when you tune in. The shows are also archived at PRN as well as at www.abetterworld.net permanently at the second. So if you do not hear this now, well, tell your friends and they can listen another time. Today's show is going to be multiple. We're going to begin with Council Member Dan Garodnick and John Sheehy, who is, both of these gentlemen are working assiduously at protecting the rights of New Yorkers and their apartments. Rent regulations is the subject at hand to begin with, and what's going on in New York, as usual, is a bellwether for the rest of the country. So we like to get things right in New York first, so all others can follow in good suit. And then we will be following up with Swami Beyondananda, who is also known as Steve Behrman, but not as frequently. And he'll be speaking about the body politic and what he refers to as electile dysfunction. We'll be having a lot of fun with Swami Beyondananda in the second half of the show. So, for now, I would like to introduce you to Dan Garodnick, who is a city council member here in New York City. And
hello.
You're there.
I am here.
Excellent. So glad to have you, Dan.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Really, we've been trying to get you on the show for some time now, and I'm very glad that you are available for at least a few minutes here.
Oh, it's my honor. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course, of course. Now, you've had a very distinguished career while you've been a politician, let alone when you've done a lot of work as a litigator in private practice in law, and as a law clerk for the Honorable Colleen McMahon of the Southern District of New York. You're a graduate of Dartmouth College, and you were the editor-in-chief of the UPenn Law Review. So I say you're eminently qualified for making a difference in this city.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You know, when you tell people that story about the Law Review, that's the closest anybody thinks I'll ever be to running for president.
Don't be so sure. I see you, actually, and will support your being the mayor of New York City.
All right.
As
Thank you.
Step
That's
one.
Very kind. I appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
We need a substitute at this point. We'll get into that another time. I would like to start right now, Dan. Appreciate him and his good qualities, as I do, by the way. I'd like to start off with the pressing issue of rent stabilization and rent regulations for New York City and New York State. Can you give us the quick version of this? Because, as I understand, these regulations are due to expire in a matter of a few days.
That's correct. Rent stabilization laws are due to expire on June 15th, and checking our calendar, that is Wednesday. And the expiration of rent stabilization, of course, would mean that those many, many tenants, 2.5 million tenants, 1 million apartments, who are covered by the law, would lose the protections which are so important to them to be able to plan, to have stability in their communities, to be able to deal with the fact that we have a 1% vacancy rate in New York City for apartments. And those protections would simply go out the window, and people would be at their lease renewal able to go to the market. So somebody who is renting an apartment for $1,500 to $2,000, for example, might see their rents double or even triple in some circumstances, and that would be terribly destructive for them, for their lives, for their families. And these are usually middle-class people. People who have built communities. Stuyvesant-Town and Peter Cooper Village is a perfect example of this.
Yes,
You're going to be hearing from John Sheehy in a few minutes, a great leader in that neighborhood and a member of the board of the Tenants Association. We need to fight to make sure that these laws are renewed on Wednesday.
Exactly. Now, you say out of some 8 to 10 million people who live in the 5 boroughs, that 2.5 million, I don't mean to say only, but only are protected by rent stabilization laws?
Well, that's correct.
It seems like a small number in comparison to the number of apartments that are here.
Well, that's correct, and those numbers are diminishing every day. There are many tools that are available to landlords to take apartments out of rent stabilization, known as vacancy decontrol or high income decontrol. If an apartment is renting for more than $2,000 and it becomes vacant. Today, the law allows a landlord to take it out of the rent stabilization system, and when they take it out forever. This is not a temporary thing. Similarly, if an apartment is renting for more than $2,000 and the occupant is earning the occupant and family is earning more than $175,000 for 2 consecutive years, also the apartment can be taken out of rent stabilization. And again, never to come back. So those 1 million apartments, it's the top of the line here. We're not adding apartments. We're losing apartments for the most part, and so we need to protect them. We need to make sure that that we're not doing anything to weaken the laws, but rather extend them and strengthen them.
I agree with you. Now, why is it that, well, actually, before that question, I understand that the Rent Stabilization Board, which is a peculiar name since it's in the hands of not the people who want rent stabilization, but the people who are trying to eviscerate it, are trying to reduce the number of 2,000 a month to 1,500 a month, by which time apartments would become deregulated. Is there any truth to that, or is that a myth?
That's correct. I mean, there are many bills out there that would do some very unfortunate things, and that is one of them, which would reduce the threshold for deregulation to $1,500 instead of $2,000. Why would you want to do that? Well, certainly, if you are on the landlord side, the sooner that you can deregulate the apartments, the faster you can get them to the market rate. Tenants, of course, would like to see that number go up and like to see the $2,000 threshold be pushed higher so as to prolong the amount of time that they stay in the system. There are a lot of bad bills that are floating around out there up in Albany.
I would agree. Now, another peculiarity of the whole system, Dan, is that Albany controls New York City tenancy.
Yes.
Now, can you just give us the quick version of why in the world that is?
Sure. Well, all of the powers that we have as a city are granted to us by the state of New York. So we start from there.
Yes.
We are a legal creature that is created by New York State. They have delegated to us the powers to make some local decisions, and others they have reserved for themselves.
I see.
In the situation of rent laws, they have said in the state via the Erstat law that New York State has the power to make the determinations on local housing issues in New York City, and they do not wish to delegate to the likes of me and my 50 other colleagues in the New York City Council the power to make our own housing determinations. And what that means, as a practical matter, is that you have folks from Schenectady and Albany County and Rochester voting on and deciding on the rent laws and the housing laws here in New York City.
I understand that just kicked in the early to mid 70s, so that means they had more common sense before that?
Perhaps.
I think they should change the name Erstat to Ersatz.
Yeah, right.
So we're laughing, but in fact, that in 2 days, things could be very troubling because we would have one class in New York City in just a matter of 1 or 2 years when current leases become due. Because 90% approximately of people renting now under rent stabilization protections, which still isn't the greatest protection anyway, they've been eroding that in itself, would be obliged to move out of the city, as you well know, Dan, and that would leave only the haves, the upper cream, living in New York City.
Well, that's right. And, there's real risk to us as a city to have a situation where it's only really the very rich and the very poor living here. You want a diverse local economy. You want people at various bands of income being able to afford living in and close to the central business district. It's good for the environment. It's good for robust retail offerings, and it is something which we as a city want to encourage. We don't want to see it simply disappear, and this is one of the ways for us to make sure that happens.
You have been such a superb advocate of tenants' rights in general, and in Stuyvesant-Town, Peter Cooper in particular. I know you were born and raised there, and we are grateful to you for the good work and stands that you take. What are you doing in respect to this soon-to-expire law to help support the people?
Well, for one, I have made my voice known locally and have even been up myself to Albany to lobby those people who we think need to hear from us. And I even went with a busload of some 50 or 60 Stuyvesant-Town, Peter Cooper Village tenants up to Albany a couple weeks ago. I held a rolling town hall meeting to talk about any issues that they wanted to talk about on the bus ride up. I was the onboard entertainment. And we went and we met with staff from the governor, staff of the Speaker of the Assembly, other relevant elected officials to make sure they understood that we were organized, that we were committed to making sure this got done, and that we did not want to see very important tenant victories in court, like the Roberts versus Tishman-Speyer decision, which John Sheehy is going to be very well equipped to discuss with you, and
Indeed.
I think I even hear him.
Yes, I'm here.
You will hear from him the importance of that case and why we wanted to make sure that it did not simply get eradicated in the course of some backroom deal in Albany.
Exactly. Now, what is the call to action for tenants who are listening? Or we have listeners from across the country, and it's always wise for people all over to support people locally, like what just happened just some months back in Wisconsin, where everybody was pitching in to help support the Wisconsin teachers union and others.
That's right.
Just an example. What can people do, Dan, to help make a difference in this legislation currently?
Several things. One, I would say they should call the governor.
Okay.
They should reach out to the leadership of both the Assembly and the Senate up in Albany. If they live in a district, somebody who they're not certain about their position on rent stabilization and protection of middle-class people in New York City, they should certainly give them a buzz as well. And I should say, for the folks who live outside of New York City, people should remember that in examples like Stuyvesant-Town and Peter Cooper Village, there was a business plan back in 2006 to buy the property,
yes,
take people out of their apartments as quickly as possible, turn the apartments to the market rate, and displace all the folks who lived there as quickly as possible. And that business plan was invested in by many, many people around the country, whether it was the pension funds of Florida, California, the teachers' employee retirement system, California, the Church of England, who may have some overseas listeners. The point of all this is that there are folks everywhere who have a stake in the stability of New York City and the protection of middle-class people in New York City. It has been used as investments have been used as a weapon against tenants here, and that is a concern that people everywhere should have.
Exactly. Well, thank you very much, Dan. I know you're under the gun here, and you have another appointment.
It's my pleasure, and you're in very good hands with Mr. Sheehy.
Thank you.
And, I'll look forward to speaking with you soon.
Dan, I want to have you back on to talk about hydrofracking and the pipeline proposal.
You got it. I will look forward to it.
Excellent.
Okay,
thank you so much for making the time. Bye-bye now. That was Dan Garodnick, City Council member in New York City, a distinguished gentleman who is one of those few voices who is continually willing to speak up on behalf of the people. And so many, unfortunately, of his colleagues just jump ship when it comes to caring for us instead of the almighty dollar. But we're going to figure out a way to brook this, because this adversarial relationship between the so-called haves and have-nots and the deterioration of the middle class is really not a sustainable arrangement. And it will be up to us that we do something clearly about this. So I so appreciate Dan joining us, and we will have him back. And now we're going to turn our attention, before we get to our dear friend Swami Beyondananda, to John Sheehy, who is a very interesting gentleman. He's a former assistant DA in New York County. He is formerly the assistant counsel to Governor Nelson Rockefeller, and for 12 years was a member of the New York State Commission on Judicial Conduct. He is a retired commander in the U.S. Navy, JAG Corp, and is the former chair of the board of New York City's court-appointed advocated. That doesn't seem like a full sentence. But, John, what is the end of that sentence?
Court-appointed special advocates.
Special advocates.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Got it. Oh, that's just a typo. All right, fine.
Thank you, Mitchell. It's a pleasure to be on with you.
Absolutely. And you are currently a member of the board of directors of Stuyvesant-Town, Peter Cooper Village.
That is correct.
Tenants Association. Well, thank you, John, for coming onto the show with such short notice. Mm-hmm. It's that we haven't been given, as New Yorkers, enough notice, really, about this kind of egregious type of legislation that is in the midst. Mm-hmm. What can we do about it? What do we need to know about it?
Well, I'll tell you, just very much as your prior guest, Dan Garodnick, has said, the main thing is to speak out. And I'm proud to be a member of the board of this Tenants Association, led by its chairman, Al Doyle, longtime chairman and president.
Indeed.
And one of the things that the Tenants Association was able to do is, after Tishman Speyer came in here with that business plan that Dan described and started rooting out the rent-stabilized tenants who, for various reasons, those who they were being alleged not to have this as their primary residence, and others, and the rents started rising dramatically, the Tenants Association was able to spearhead this drive to gather plaintiffs for this very important class action, Roberts versus Tishman Speyer.
Before we go into that, John, I want to set a context, because many of the people listening are Many are from New York, but many are also across the country and beyond. And to dive right into the antics of Tishman Speyer is something they do not have any idea about. So do you want to set the context of what Stuyvesant-Town, Peter Cooper Village is in the larger historical context of affordable housing in the United States?
Sure. It's a singular property consisting of 81 acres, 11,000 apartments, and approximately 25,000 residents. It was built in 1947 by MetLife, and they owned...
Which was gifted the land by the city of New York at that time and granted a very powerful 50-year tax abatement.
Exactly. And so they were fine stewards of the property until in 1995, 1996, they decided to put it up for sale. And so it was sold to a partnership between Tishman Speyer and BlackRock. And it was
two mega real estate giants.
Yes, and
sort of like Mr. Potter in It's a Wonderful Life.
Right. But it was a record transaction of a little bit under $6 billion.
The largest single U.S. Real estate residential transaction on record.
Correct. And so that was in 1996. So now there was new management here. And so Tishman Speyer really had this plan that ultimately both properties would become luxury housing, market rate-driven apartment rentals.
Now let me add that the gentleman we just had on, City Council member Dan Garodnick, had assembled a tenant buyout. Mm-hmm. And that means put together essentially some $4 billion from different trade unions, pension funds who are willing to support affordable housing and the people who lived in Stuyvesant-Town.
That's right.
And that was rejected out of hand by MetLife and upped, if you will, by at least $1 billion by Tishman Speyer, the big shots.
That's right. There was an auction process, I think, where 7 or 8 bidders were involved in it.
Yes.
So that was the final
I think that's an important point, John, to bring to bear, because it's not just that there was one bidder, but the people themselves, the tenants, actually organized. So this becomes a very good model for others across the country to see that tenants can organize and can even raise, mega bucks to support them.
Correct. And not only did they organize at that point, but they continued their community efforts, and they continued them in the wake of Tishman Speyer's very aggressive business plan to convert this property to, as I said, luxury housing.
Yes.
Now, it's important to bear in mind that this transaction occurred at really the height of the real estate bubble, and it was fueled by a large loan made by Wachovia Bank and Merrill Lynch, which was shortly thereafter securitized and sold out to investors. Turned out that the two principal investors of this loan were Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And they continue today with a $3 billion first mortgage on the property. Now, what happened is after Tishman Speyer was here for approximately 3.5 years, the real estate market went south. The economy got
thanks to Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae.
Yeah, and they went way down south, and Uncle Sam picked them up.
Yes.
And we had a disaster.
Yes.
And so on the end of 2009, Tishman Speyer and BlackRock walked away. They defaulted on the loan. That left Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac sitting here with a first mortgage of $3 billion, and that brought into the property a corporation by the name of CW Capital. They are a special servicer who are here acting on behalf of the first mortgagees. Now, something else happened along the way. And the something else was, shortly before the default of Tishman Speyer, the New York Court of Appeals, in a landmark ruling, ruled in the case of Roberts versus MetLife and Tishman Speyer that these two landlords, MetLife first and then Tishman Speyer following in their footsteps, illegally were deregulating.
Conspiring.
Yes, conspiring.
Colluding.
To deregulate rent-stabilized apartments, turning them into market-rate apartments, while at the same time taking real estate tax abatements from the city of New York under its J51 real estate tax abatement program. So this was a very important ruling.
You could say, tish, tish. You're not
Yes,
allowed to do that.
You could indeed, but Tishman is gone, and CW Capital now stands in the shoes of Tishman and BlackRock, responsible for whatever is going to happen in the lower court as the case proceeds.
Well, the point is that there are a few points to be extracted from this, John, one of which is that we see two mega giants in the corporate world, again, one an insurance company that's also involved in real estate, and its own mega real estate firm, Tishman Speyer, colluding, conspiring, and deliberately causing illegal actions and people to be evicted who should not be, and overcharging on the legal basis of rent. And these are civil offenses. I imagine they're not criminal.
They're not criminal.
And because they're not deemed criminal, they will be continued over and over again by these two, as well as all of their colleagues in the field. And there was a very important act put into place by FDR back in the early 30s called the Glass-Steagall Act, about which I know you are very familiar. And because of its cancellation, its repeal in 1999 by President Clinton, that these kinds of acts became decriminalized. And it has allowed for the entire subprime debacle and the banker debauchery that took place since then in our country, from savings and loans all the way up to Paulson's overseeing from the Treasury Department windows what happened in 2008.
Yeah.
So
well, that's right. It broke down the traditional barrier between investment banking and commercial banking.
Exactly.
And so these two giants were now in each other's turf and could engage in practices such as you were discussing.
Exactly. So I'm saying this because I want to fill it out, because the specifics of what's gone on with Stuyvesant-Town and what we're dealing with there is itself an issue of no small importance, especially to those of us who live there.
Right.
But I have to look at the larger ramifications of our legal system and the way they impact or don't impact on larger corporate interests, from the bankers to a quasi-government agency, so-called, of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, who are basically using their face mask of government relationship to hide behind the worst of corporate crimes.
Yeah. Well, they're nothing more than wards of the state right now.
Yes.
And they wouldn't even exist were it not for the federal government coming in to prop them up here in the wake of their excesses and what they did to fuel this terrible subprime market.
Exactly. Now, in conclusion, I so appreciate your being on the show today and sharing what you have with us. What would you say for people listening who want to be proactive about the current situation in New York City to get into action, to help to mobilize all of us?
Yes, I would echo Dan Garodnick's advice. And what we should do now in the final days of this week is call the governor's office, call the Assembly Speaker, Sheldon Silver's office, and call the Speaker, the Majority Leader of the State Senate, Dean Skelos, and make known to them the importance to our community of 1 million people who depend on rent stabilization.
2.5 million people, 1 million apartments.
Yes, and make it clear how vital this is, and that is what the Tenants Association has been organizing throughout the past several months, and people should continue to press it. Do not sit back and think, well, everything is going to be okay, because our voices must continue to be heard.
Beautiful. John Sheehy, thank you so much for being a guest on today's show and weighing in with your vast experience.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Mitchell.
Absolutely. Thanks again. This is Mitchell J. Rabin for A Better World on Progressive Radio Network. Gary Null's station is always making a difference on every single show that is broadcast on these airwaves. So thank you so much for joining us, and weigh in, be proactive. On our website very soon we will be reactivating our activist link called Participatory Democracy. So thanks so much for paying attention, and realize that the issues with which we are dealing and facing here in the Big Apple are the same, of a different flavor, apple, across the country, and everyone is involved. Can you imagine not being able to go to Broadway because the tickets were $1,000 a seat? Why? Because they can get it, because there are no middle-class people. And if you remember a show I did some months back with Richard Wilkinson, who, with Kate Pickett, social epidemiologists, with the book called The Spirit Level, spoke about the power of the middle class, and it's only in those countries that had a thriving middle class and not a powerful polarity between rich and poor that had the greatest health, the greatest well-being, the greatest happiness quotient, the least crime, the best educations, and according to all social parameters, were truly the highest level, you could say, human beings. Now, talking about high-level human beings, we have, for the next part of our show, to the end, a wonderful gentleman and good friend of mine, Steve Behrman, a.k.a. Swami Beyondananda, who is the author of a wonderful book called Swami for Precedent. And I tell you, every time I read this, I become just excited at the potential here, because humor, I think, is going to be that magic carpet ride we all ride into the future, and Swami Beyondananda, well, we'll be right behind him on this ride. We will be having Swami Beyondananda in New York City at the Meta Center this Wednesday evening on June 15th at 7 o'clock. Just go to our website, abetterworld.net, under events, and you will see the information about it. And if you are anywhere on the East Coast, please come join us. So, Swamiji, are you there?
Oh, no, I'm actually here.
Oh, okay, fine. I'm here.
But
Wait a minute.
Neither here nor there.
It's neither here nor there.
Great to talk with you.
It is so good to have you back.
Well, that's right. And I'm so looking forward to being at the Meta Center, because I never met a center I didn't like.
Exactly. Well, you will be in very good hands. I want to let you know, I hope I haven't spoken out of turn, Swamiji, but I told people in our many last newsletters that we would have a raffle for the first 100 people who signed up to come on Wednesday evening to see you in person and touch your cloak. That you would enter them into a raffle for a ride on your magic carpet.
Oh, my goodness. Well, that's certainly good. I am expecting to call them on a call. I will be calling somebody on the carpet. We don't know who that might be.
Very good.
Well, I don't know if that is going to be possible, but you know what? We will do something wonderful. For them.
Indeed, definitely.
We'll make them laugh. How about that?
How's that? Exactly.
And then they can levitate through the power of levity, and as you know, gravity just brings us down.
Exactly, that's right. So we'll avoid gravity. We will not speak of any grave subjects.
That's right. Well, or we will, but we will do them lightly. People say, well, how can you joke about politics? Well, it's simple. There's definitely something funny going on.
That is true.
We want to shine the light of laughter on the endarkened corridors of power, so that, as you were just saying, that we do have a middle class, and that, in fact, I believe that there is what we are calling an evolutionary upwising. People are waking up and wising up and realize that there are also the political polarities. You know, we have a deeply divided body politic. Half of the population believes our elections are broken, and the other half believe they are fixed. And so what we need to do is actually call all Americans to come front and center, forget the left and the right, come front and center to overgrow the current dysfunctional system, which is not a democracy, it's a mocracy.
Yes, indeed.
That's why we have, look at the problems we have. We have electile dysfunction. We've got deficit inattention disorder. Not to mention, we are still dealing with the residue of mad cowboy disease.
This is so, and not to mention irony deficiency and truth decay.
That's right. That's right. Because you're doing a wonderful job on your progressive radio network. Because so much of the mainstream media inundates us with so much toxic BS that our skeptic system overflows.
Exactly. Our skeptic
and we don't want that to happen.
This is very true. This is very true.
Yes.
I know.
Am I imitating you or are you imitating me? We have to figure this out.
I think it's a hall of mirrors.
Well, actually what happens, I think just being in the farce field, you've caught an inflection.
That's correct. That's correct. And pretty soon you'll be back in New York in your own hometown, and you might start speaking like a Jew from Brooklyn.
Well, I don't know about that, although I have to say that my guru, Harry Cohen Baba, is always with me.
Very good.
And, of course, he had a black belt in Borscht Belt.
That's excellent. I describe you, Swamiji, as a combination of a Borscht Belt comic with a guru from India. And if you can imagine that combination, you get toi.
Well, you know what? Also, I am probably the only Swami who channels both Elvis and Bullwinkle. And I might actually channel, on Wednesday night, I might channel Bullwinkle channeling Elvis. Or perhaps Elvis channeling Bullwinkle. I don't know.
We got to see what happens, and that's a big draw in itself. I want to let people know that you are also the co-author and collaborator with our dear friend Bruce Lipton, cellular biologist, in a wonderful CD series called Spontaneous Evolution. And in that work, you elaborate upon your understanding of the body politic and electile dysfunction, but both comically as well as seriously. And I was wondering if there's anything that you would like to tell us about that and the way that impacts on our current state of, if you don't mind my saying, affairs.
Well, okay, that's a fair enough. No, actually, I have to say this is, I am a multiple personality.
Yes.
And my alter ego, Steve Behrman, has written, actually it's a book and the CD series. The book is called Spontaneous Evolution, Our Positive Future and a Way to Get There from Here. Yes. Now, there's two kinds of mystics in the world. There are the optimistics and the pessimistics, yes?
Yes.
And so we are clearly in the optimistic camp because we see that even though there are things that seem to be falling apart, there are also other things that are falling together. And we are in a state of evolution right now where our human species realizes that we are all cells in the body of humanity, that we're all in this together. We're all one with the same one. So if I am one, you're one too.
Wait a minute.
Now, the book, it's actually a serious book on science, spirituality, politics, economics, psychology, and so on.
Yes.
And, Steve and I will be there signing copies of the book on Wednesday night. And, of course, it's a no-lose proposition. If I become very famous, you will have a famous autograph. And if not, you'll have a rare book. And we'll have the CD series there and so on. So yes, what's really, really important, what I want to say is that in these times of evolution, it's so important for us to laugh together, because it certainly beats crying separately. And in laughing together, we can gather the love and the courage that is needed to get us through.
Yes, isn't that so? Did you hear any of the first half of today's show, Swamiji?
Well, no, I heard the bottom half of the first half, and I seem to hear that. Well, I heard you talking first about the putting a ceiling on what I think we used to call it rent control.
Yes.
And then you were talking about the fact that the middle class is a vanishing species.
Correct.
And that is, I think that's very, very important, because we have had in this country something that's happened is that in the past 30 years in particular, the rule of gold has overruled the golden rule. And what's happened is that the power of money, what we call it the mining interest, that's mine, that's mine, that's mine, and that's mine. Yeah. And so because of those powerful interests, the power of love has been diminished, and we only have one bottom line, and that is, does it make money? And the rest of us have been subject to what is called the trickle-down theory. You know, there's wealth up at the top, and some of it trickles down. And that is why they call the people at the bottom peons. Right? You know, there's something trickling down.
Oh, yes.
Yes. And so it's very, very important that, and you know, the people in this country, we have been divided into the red tribe Republicans and the blue tribe Democrats, ordinary people, and we spend all of our energy arguing about whether it is worse to kill the born or the unborn. Meanwhile, plenty of the born are dying, and the bill is being sent to the not yet born.
Yes.
So we need to leave these labels of left and right. We need to come front and center, dance together in rhythm and flow, and turn the funk into function, and leave the junk at the junction.
Wise words, Swamiji. Truly wise words. A remedy that I came up with having to do with this red and blue dysfunction back at the last election, when Dennis Kucinich was still in the running, and so on the other end was Ron Paul, I came up with this idea, and I'd love to hear what you have to say about it, of a ticket consisting of Dennis Kucinich, Democratic president, with running mate, vice presidential candidate from the right, so to speak, Ron Paul. And in that way, we would cause, instead of a fission in the human brain of America, a fusion. And we would go from red and blue to purple.
Well, you know, it's already happening. I think that there is the beginnings of that alliance that is being created between conservative libertarians and progressive Greens, red and blue coming together to talk until they're purple in the face. So, yes, I think that is happening.
Yes.
And you see, I think that one of the great things that is going on, as you talked about, you know, we've had this nuclear power, nuclear fission. Well, what we need right now is nuclear fusion.
Yes.
Coming together under this nuclear idea that we're all in this together. The body politic needs two strong wings to fly, left wing and right wing. Only have one wing, you fly around in circles.
That's right.
But we need the functional aspect of each of these wings. You know, life is progressive and conservative. Life requires growth, and it requires protection. The egg has to be protected by the shell. However, when a chicken is to be born, the shell must break. So, the structure of life, protection, is in the service of life. And what we have right now, if I can be blunt, is that the protectors in this country are working for the predators. They need to be working for the nurturers.
Yes.
And we have our dysfunctional political system. We have the toxic, abusive male energy over on the Republican side. we have the toxic enabler female energy on the Democratic side. We have all the muscle over here. We have all of the compassion over there. And we need to bring all the best of these together into a whole-brained, wholehearted politic.
Exactly.
And that way, the body politic can protect itself from the sociopathogens. Listen, I have nothing against criminals. I just don't want them running things, that's all.
They just shouldn't be in power positions.
Well, that's right. But you see, the reason why they're in power positions is because the body politic has been divided and conquered. Yes. And we have that part of the upwising is people waking up and wising up and gathering around the virtues and values that 90% of us have in common. Yes. We all want honest governance. You know, there was a survey done very recently. In fact, my partner in a book called Reuniting America that we're working on, Joseph McCormick, he is leading groups on the Northwest and people from all across the political spectrum, very right-wing, very left-wing, very middle, and so on. They all agree that the power of money has gotten too powerful. So everybody on all sides, except for the very few who are manipulating, everybody recognizes that the loss of the middle class is very significant because you have the very, very poor and powerless, and so many. I'll tell you how bad it's gotten. There's been so much layoffs and downsizing. I went to one of these 1970s rock and roll revivals. I was shocked. You know who I heard?
The
Two Dog Night. They had to lay off a dog.
Oh, no.
That's how serious it is.
That's because it's still a dog-eat-dog world.
Well, that's true. But you know what? It's actually... Dogs do not eat other dogs, you see. Dogs may bark at other dogs. Dogs may lick other dogs, but they don't eat other dogs.
That's true.
So we don't want to give dogs a bad name.
What's interesting, Swamiji, is that as far as I know, human beings are the only ones that actually kill and torture, apparently for sport. All other animals on the planet will only kill to protect their young, to protect turf, or from vast hunger/starvation.
Well, that's apparently true. That's apparently true. Somebody. I think that part of our evolution right now is to actually evolve to become humankind.
Yes.
With actual human kindness.
Yes.
So that is our evolution, and you know what? We have been programmed by 5,000 years of rule by the lowest common denominator.
Yes.
And so we are awakening from this program. Very, very important, and we have to recognize this is so important that love is more powerful than fear. Otherwise, we'd be singing, all you need is fear, right?
Yes. And that just wouldn't sound so good.
No. She fears you, yeah. We're not singing that. That wouldn't be good.
John Lennon would be rolling in his grave.
Well, I wonder what he'd be rolling.
No, we don't.
Okay, well then.
Very true. No, your points are well made, and the humor that you bring to bear is just utterly, completely delightful. And getting down to the issues of electile dysfunction is just a case in point, Swamiji.
Well, we have these new smart... Well, actually now our votes are actually... We've extended the secret ballot to such an extent that our votes are actually counted in secret. We call this faith-based vote counting.
Is that so?
And some of these new smart voting machines, they are so smart they don't even need voters.
That's right. They do it all by themselves.
Yeah, and I think that we have to recognize, I think that one of the problems, one of the problems, there's a difference between the left and the right. The right wing, I mean, look at Fox News. Now, I'm going to tell you something about Fox News. In numerology, the letters FOX stand for 666. So they have the mark of the devil. And
Mark
in
of the
fact,
beast.
I wrote a piece about Fox News called "Come On, Baby, Fight My Liar." So the people on the right, they like to be lied to. On the other hand, the people on the left, they prefer to lie to themselves. And, you know, I mean, we expected, right, Obama, you know, he'd be the great white knight. Slightly darker white knight, but still a white knight. And who doesn't want a white knight on the dark night?
That's right.
Okay. Well, the hopium is wearing off, right?
Yes.
And we have to recognize that in addition to a new president, we need a new precedent. And that precedent is government of the people, by the people, for the people, where the government does our bidding, not the bidding of the highest bidder. And the only way that's going to happen, it's not going to come down from the sky. It will only happen when we recognize that we are the leaders we've been waiting for.
Indeed. This is the truth. And your magic carpet ride into New York City will help to awaken and enlighten from the endarkenment exactly this
Yeah, that's
idea.
right. There is endarkenment. And, you know, I think it's very, very important. You know, laughter creates courage.
Yes.
And it's very important to have courage right now. Rather than go running and hiding because we might be upset, the truth shall upset you free.
That's right.
And it's very, very important. I'll tell you a story. Maybe many of the readers have read the book A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Yes.
And in this book, he talks about...
And many of the listeners as well as the readers, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. People
that's
are...
okay.
Many of you may be listening in Braille. Okay.
Well, they're
okay.
reading us for sure.
Yes, yes. Well, perhaps you've probably read the book while you're listening. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. He talks about being in a Nazi death camp during World War II. Mm-hmm. He and a fellow inmate made a pact that every day they would find something to laugh about. Because in laughter, there is a part that cannot be imprisoned, that cannot be controlled. And to give you an idea of how powerful this was and the kind of leverage that humor provides, one of the jokes that actually circulated among the inmates in the camps was about these two Jewish fellows who decided they are going to assassinate Hitler. And they knew that Hitler's motorcade was going to pass this one intersection at 11 in the morning. And so they're waiting for him. 11 in the morning, and Hitler doesn't show up. 11:15, 11:30. When he's not there by 11:45, one of the assassins says to the other, "Gee, I hope nothing has happened to him." So that is the power of humor to create courage and make yourself bigger than the situation. We need that right now.
Yes,
we need
indeed.
the courage to shine the light on the darkness, and in that process, we are going to recognize that this is the American evolution. This is the next phase, and we have to be up for it.
Exactly. And we have to smile and laugh our way through it instead of, as you say, cry
That's
separately,
right.
Let's laugh together.
That's correct.
Indeed. Well, Swami Beyondananda, you have brought us beyond yet again, and I so appreciate your good work.
Well, I'm glad to see that, and I'm encouraging. You know, there's two kinds of people in the world: the kind who divide people into two kinds, and the kind who don't. Well, if you're the kind who divide people into two kinds of people, the two kinds of people are the kind of people who love to laugh and those who need to laugh. So if you're in either of those categories and know people, let us bring the house down, bring the house up. Let's fill the place with laughter, and maybe we can create a force field big enough to heal the hole in the boson layer.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Swamiji, and I look so forward to seeing you on Wednesday.
Namaste.
Namaste.
And namaste go. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. And for more information about Swami Beyondananda, go to www.wakeuplaughing.com. And COM in this case stands for comedy. So I'm so glad that you joined us all today, and his words should be taken lightly and seriously because they're truly brilliant. He has a true gift for playing with language in such a way that electile dysfunction. Who ever heard of such a thing? But when you're friendly with Beyondananda, you hear about it routinely. Anyway, truly his book, Swami for Precedent, is brilliant, quite honestly, and the work that he did in collaboration with Bruce Lipton is also excellent, Spontaneous Evolution. This is Mitchell J. Rabin. I do want to encourage you all, anyone who can, to join us Wednesday evening at the Meta Center at 7 o'clock. We'll have a very special, as you can tell, good time, and it will be really a true learning for us all. Part of his book is called A 7-Step Plan to Heal the Body Politic and Cure Electile Dysfunction. So there will be mass healing for all who come, and a ride on the magic carpet for those who enter into the raffle and are chosen. So on that note, thanks so much for joining us. If you have not become part of our A Better World newsletter, please do by simply going to www.abetterworld.net. Become part of the community. Here at Progressive Radio Network and at A Better World, we are continuing to move forward, us, we the people, to make a difference in the world and create collaboration between the haves and the have-nots. It's not just one. We don't want adversarialness. We want togetherness. And on that note, I look forward to seeing you all next week.